Okay, good afternoon, and I am reconvening our Finance Committee meeting for, I guess it's October 29th now. And just to recap for anybody watching, this is a continuation of the discussions that we started yesterday with regards to the operating draft budget for 2026. So yesterday we discussed everything that was presented as is. And we've taken now about 24 hours to kind of digest what was presented. And I guess maybe I will, unless I look to staff, if there's anything that anybody wants to add at this point in discussion from what we had yesterday, then I will open up the discussion between, I guess, Alex and I on thoughts on what was presented and any things that we want to go back and look at, or any ideas of where perhaps we can make some cost savings, hopefully cost savings and not cost increases. So, Alex, did you want me to turn it over to you, or can you put your mic on?
Yeah. So again, a lot to go through. There's a lot of things here. I'm trying to look for efficiencies here, but yeah, the only thing that really pops out in my mind is the talk of additional staffing for administrative support. And I think I've got a clear view of what that looks like. We talked about the new position director of emergency services. I don't support giving them a whole lot of support because they need to do their own thing. But I see, just working in the office here and being here, I see that there's as we grow, there's more work, and I don't want to see anybody get overwhelmed where they're starting to have more work than they can manage efficiently. And I know that additional support would be a big help to not just one department, but other departments. What I do see is when when there's a big task to perform, like sending out tax bills or doing any of these other things, that there's all hands on deck. And that's a big plus that we can be proud of because everybody works well together and the departments are all cooperative with each other. But I do see a need for future addition to our staffing to just to provide that additional administrative support. That's something I would support. So that's
Okay. So, I guess I've got a couple of thoughts. Number one, I don't even know where to begin. Okay. Um, and I don't know who can best answer the question about how eScribe is used. And what is all included when we renew our license and our users for eScribe. I know that council has access to the app. But I believe, and maybe I'll ask Alex, I think I'm the only one that actually uses the app. Or like when you access the agenda, Alex, do you access it through the app or through the website? Yeah. Okay, just Mike.
through the website almost exclusively. I use the eScribe when I'm in council chambers at council, so I can just scroll up on it, right? But I generally will bring it up on my tablet or my phone and read the stuff through the week off the website because it's all there. Everything is accessible and
And
yeah,
then when we get an in-camera report, because there's the ability on eScribe to post confidential material, but you have to access that through the app. So do you do that through app, or do you ask for that to be printed?
Um, in the rare occasion when we do receive something like that, I do use the app, only that I call in and get the password and get all that sorted out. Not a particularly convenient way to view it, but yeah, that would be probably the only time that I would use it outside of council training.
Because I don't know whether there's efficiencies in not having the app. not having as many users on. And again, that's not going to be significant dollars. But I don't know. Is that something that we can look at? I know that all the municipalities now use eScribe, obviously. It's whether it's because it's our websites are supporting it. I don't know. Like I think from a staffing perspective, it's an efficient way for our agendas. Like, I mean, obviously you'd have to ask Tina, but is there some cost savings there that can be made when we renew it?
Worth the ask.
It's worth the ask. I mean, um, I did talk to the deputy mayor and asked him, and because I asked him about when we go in camera, how he accesses it, and he said he just asks for it to be printed off. And I mean, it is efficient for us to be able to access it through the app, but if nobody's using it, then why is council, like if council's just using the website, then why are we paying for 5 users? You know?
Mhm.
So that was one area. And again, not a lot. The other one that I wondered about, and Jeff, this is for you, on the increase to reserve. I've got to find it. Okay, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. So the equipment reserve. And so it's been highlighted that our contribution to the reserve is not keeping up. And so we would like to increase and increase how much money we're putting into the reserve by 196,000, right? So that's a 55% increase to what we have been traditionally putting in, if I'm reading that correctly. So my question is, how does that align? Obviously, to make the comment, the contribution in the reserve is not keeping up. Obviously, we've looked at our asset management plan and what needs to happen. But how does it align with our asset management plan? 2, is there a way that we could increase it incrementally, recognize that we have to make these increases, but rather than being hit with a 55% increase right off the bat, maybe do it over a few years. And then thirdly, is there equipment that we have that we are using that maybe we've allocated a lifespan, and this is just for discussion. So, but like, let's say we've said the lifespan is 10 years. Well, maybe we can look at it and actually the lifespan is actually 12 years or 13 years. Is there efficiencies that we can be making in that respect?
Yeah, I'm sure Catherine will want to jump in after I get in there. So I think the equipment budget itself covers all the equipment. So it's not just public works, it's everything. Number 2, there has been an increase in equipment costs that we're noticing because we've bought new equipment in the last little while. So we're realizing that snowplows, graders, and backhoes, that sort of thing have gone up because we've bought the new ones. So now we have to readjust the 5-year plan to do that. The asset management plan does use the way we design it, like the way Catherine has set up it's more than a 5-year plan. I believe it's almost a 20-year plan, but really realistically, we just look at the 5 years. The lifespan on the equipment, that was kind of set up back when they first started this, and it's generally looked at on industry standards. So if a snowplow was being used in the south portion of Middlesex County or the Middlesex County themselves or ourselves, usually the lifespan basically based on MTO standards is 10 years. Having said that, our last couple of snowplows have gone 11 to 12. So there is room to look at in particular what Lucan Biddulph does with their equipment and how many hours we do put on our equipment. So I'm certainly open to discussion on that if it helps. But some of it, and again, I don't want to speak for Catherine because I just know what the public works side is. I don't know if part of this problem is more fire related or other equipment related, but yeah, I don't know why we're so far back and behind the system when we were ahead of the system. Yeah.
So I guess my turn to speak. So the equipment reserve is only for the Public Works and Parks and Rec equipment. The reason for the increase this year, so we don't go negative, is because we're in the capital request is for addition of equipment of about $200,000. So we have to make up that shortfall that we didn't have. We did have some big increases in the last few years when we reevaluated the cost of everything post-COVID and updated that as well. And that would cause the increases in the last few years. This one is significantly more to cover off those new requests if those should move forward. And then every time when we do the budget, we bring up our equipment list. Okay, these are the items that are up for replacement. Staff takes a look and go, okay, no, that's in good shape. We can defer that to a future year. And so then we look at what level of contribution we have for that year. Maybe we can offset it, have a less one for that year, or do we continue in our same plan? Because we know we're going to need it in the next year. Or do we then break that out maybe over a couple of years to compensate for that instead of just in 1 year? So those are kind of things we look at as well. So I think for this year, the increase is because of the new equipment.
And how much do we typically put in, so if we're increasing it by 196,000, what do we typically put into the reserves?
So last year we put 356,000 in 2025 is a 356,000 for contribution, and that should have left us with a $154,000 balance, and then we wouldn't had as many this year. Continue with that with a smaller increase. We were I don't know if it's more like going to be more like 20%, now we're at 55% within the plan. The prior to that was just under 300,000 and then like 250 prior in 2023. And then we did that reevaluation. Yeah.
So essentially, we want this year to put $550,000 in,
And that would make it
right?
to back to even.
And that
If
would,
we go, then we're looking at the next year will be a 20% increase on the 551. 550, never had lifted there, 552.
so then year after year, you want to put 550 in, plus like, okay, whatever
Yeah.
the increase of the day is, okay?
If that's, the budget supports that for 2027, I would expect to be like a 20% increase in 2028. I would go back to the 5% is what we were originally planning as we were doing this, but then the last few years we've increased it by more because of those other reasons I mentioned.
Okay. So maybe, I guess, maybe that comes out of the capital discussion that we're going to have later, maybe, as to how to deal with that reserve.
Kind of goes hand in
It
hand.
goes, yeah,
So like the new, like a new sidewalk plow and an attachment for it, and then a couple of requests from the Parks and Rec side. The main one is the new sidewalk plow to add to it. And then when we were bringing that in, we did extend and we did that overhaul on the old one, we did extend the life and put that further out into the plan as we had discussed at the time of that report.
Mhm.
So as we grow, I guess we just need more information, more equipment. But we also have potential to offset that 552 with, depending on if the sell the 2 snow plows. So we have the one Western Star up for sale. Depends what we get in for that. Any proceeds from that will go right back into reserve. We are collecting a small amount of DCs for a second snow plow or a second sidewalk machine. So as we collect those over time, that will go back in, and then we can reevaluate where our balance is as that goes on.
Is the sale of, that's on Gov Deals, is that like for a limited time or does it just stay on until it's sold?
No, it's a set period of time. I believe we said put it in for 2 weeks.
Right. And can you tell if there's any interest? Or-
I just checked before I sat down. It was at 15,000, and it still has 9 days to go.
All right, so that might be one area that we can revisit then. Okay. Okay. Okay, so then the other area that I kind of looked at and was trying to get a better handle on was the Parks and Rec levy. So right now, the way it's presented, it's a $240,000 increase over last year, with one-time fees of being 65,000. So if you take that out, that means that we're increasing 175,000 over last year, give or take, right? So first of all, I guess what is the plan for where are we headed with percentage of levy to revenues and costs money coming in? So are we headed towards a 55-45? Are we 50-50, 60-40? What's the vision for that? That's my first question.
Okay, I guess my best answer for that right this moment is I think we were 51 last year and 55 this year. Is that correct? But a lot of it does hinder on the capital and what we do in capital, and I think that's a lot the same as the reserve we were just talking about. A lot of what we're putting in the Parks and Rec reserve is to fund the capital that we're doing. But I think to answer your question, I would love to get back to the 50-50 mark between revenue and expenses, so that we're 50% revenue. And I think we're looking at different revenue generators and even looking at the fee bylaw just this morning. We're trying to find ways that we can be better and maybe even do some capital saving throughout our revenue. So that's going to be a conversation that we have when the fee bylaw comes in December. But I would say my goal would be the 50% mark.
Okay, thank you for that. So I'm glad you brought up fees because I had that. But so 175,000, which is essentially, again, give or take, just talking round numbers, like 3% it's a 3% increase in our taxes. So what is driving that 175,000? And you're just saying this is coming out of the capital request discussion.
That 3% is pure operating. And I think that's part of the discussion. I mean, the 2% on the staff increases as well as some steps and as well as just some operating expenses that we talked about in the throughout the process yesterday. So that's where that number is coming from.
So when it comes to our fees, and maybe it's more information to come. Is there, like, are we charging enough? So if you take, just for example, the senior programming, and maybe I need a better understanding of how it is that you come up with what we charge our participants, like, and what's being brought in. If I go line by line, there's under senior programming, there's the hall rental, which I assume is it captures the revenue of all of that senior programming. So that's 30,000. But then the programming costs that are 16,000. So that's great. We're making 14,000. But are we? Like, what does that, like, what are all the costs for senior programming? And I'm just using this for an example so I can kind of try to work my way. Does that include the, like, and when you have the programming and all of the costs, do you capture the costs of administration in there? Like, I know we pay somebody to do the classes in the morning. That's your programming fee there. Yeah, so I guess where are the costs? Are we charging enough? Yeah, just give me a better understanding of how the numbers are come to be.
Yeah. So I guess to use senior center or senior programming as an example, the fees you'll see there is the program, like the instructor fees. You'll see any supplies that we would need to purchase for the senior programming. But you're not going to see parts of Abby's wage or part of the customer service wage that goes into the planning and administrating and parts of the finance of what they got to do to control the finances and audit the audits and that. But those are just straight up instructor fees and supplies versus amount brought in.
So under programming, those are the instructor fees and whatever supplies, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So like none of the overhead, like your utilities, your admin costs, those sorts of things aren't allocated then into that.
So like the hall rental, which is your revenue, we've budgeted a 36% increase on that under senior programming. But then on the expense side, we've increased our expenses by 60%. So like why wouldn't we do 60-60? Like, because I think that we're missing how many participants are we having? And if there's 100 participants, then essentially the whole municipality is subsidizing their recreation. And I believe that it's the responsibility of the municipality to do that to a certain extent. But what are our costs, and what are we charging people? And should we realistically be really reevaluating what it is, the cost of the programming?
Yes, and I think we are. Like I spent most of my morning this morning going over the fee by law and doing this exact conversation, and senior center was one of them because we're finding that we're at capacity, so we're at a wait list. So we know our numbers of how many we can take, and we have moved them to a monthly pass, so it's not drop in, it's not. So we have a fairly good number there, but we're also finding that we are looking at a second instructor because some of the programs that we do in the senior center needs a second instructor to be effective because one instructor can't do it all. So some of the extra costs are a second instructor fee. So we are looking to lift or to up the center senior programming to try to balance that out, that we're still doing our job. And I know actually hourly pool rental was one that we looked at today because we said our lifeguard costs are almost taking up, so it's not making a lot of sense on our pool rental costs. So we're going to up the hourly pool rental. So it won't just be a 3%, it'll be maybe a 20%. So we're always looking at that. And there is certain places that we found just this morning that were like, yeah, we need to make sure that's higher. So we'll be back looking at our numbers and there might be some efficiencies there when But without the fee bylaw passing, it's hard to exactly know how much you're going to charge. We did mostly on the revenue side a 3% increase, but then we did find areas like the pool rental that it's like, okay, we need to go more than 3%, as well as senior center program. It was actually one that we talked about this morning. So there is definitely some spots that we need to look at, and we'll continue to look at. But finding the exact number and finding all the costs is sometimes tough, because what percentage of the hydro, what percentage of the water, what percentage of staff time, but we're working on that. And I think having the overall number of parks and rec at our goal is to get to a 50% is a good goal. And let's see what are we going to do to get there and keep that. And then that'll keep us in line. So.
So were you gonna add something? I know I've asked you offline before, and it might have actually come up at some point over the years, having that discussion about having an out of municipality fee, so that if somebody is participating in something, they have to essentially pay a bonus for that. Is there any consideration? I don't know if any of our local neighbors do it. Certainly, I remember back in the day when the PUC offered spectrum courses, and if I did one, you have to pay because you didn't live in London. Is there any thought of doing that? And again, do we know of any of our neighbors that have something similar?
We just had this discussion not that long ago in regards to and it is definitely something that we've talked about. I don't know offhand any of our direct neighbors that do the fee. I mean, we have the discount for like a minor sports, which is obviously to make sure that they are, but I mean, it's administratively figuring out how to do that and how we check the addresses and how we make sure if they're within our municipality or not. So the discussion has began on if that's even possible or how that looks like. And even looking at like our software, can that be something that it can kind of do when they put in the address, it can figure out if it's in, but that's about as far as we've got with that, to be honest.
And then what about our costs for running like our diamonds and soccer fields? Like we talked yesterday about on the revenue side for soccer, there's the increase because we're going to have the ability to use all the fields. But are we competitive? Are we charging our associations and our users what we should be?
Yeah, and that's always a thing that we're looking at. We did do a survey through Swarfa. Actually, Strathroy championed it, and they kind of did it and then shared it with everybody, so we could see everybody in our general area and where we were. And to be honest, for the most part, we're almost dead middle of the graph on almost everything. I think there was pool that we looked like we were a little down, a little lower than some, but for the most part, we were fairly dead in the middle, which was kind of a nice check-in. But like today, when we were doing the fee by law, I had 3 of our neighbors' fee bylaws up on my screen so we could quickly look. Is minor sports, what's their minor sport rate? Okay, we're close to them, or we're way high here, or we're way low. So we're always looking at it. I mean, everybody's got different motives and different things, but I can definitely share that user fee study that Strathroy did. But yeah, I think you'll see that we're fairly where we should be as far as I'm concerned. We're not far off in many spots.
And when it comes to, you're just gonna have to refresh me. So I know, when it comes to our, minor ice users, I don't care how you do it, like from an accounting standpoint, essentially, there's a rebate that goes back or a discount or whatever you want to call it to, skating and minor hockey and Asable Valley. Okay. And how does that work on the baseball and soccer side? Because I don't believe it's the same sort of accounting equation.
So baseball and soccer just pay us a per player rate. So that's how that works. I believe it was $21 a player. There's a certain age group it's $7, and then up after that it's $21 per player to use the facilities, and then they basically get access to the facilities. There's no hourly rate. There's no discount, I guess, but they're the only ones that get that per player rate is minor baseball and minor soccer.
And is that, again, is that typical for the industry?
Yeah, yeah. What's looking today, I can just remember South Huron for sure had the exact same thing. North Middlesex, like, yeah, it's some do a number, like let's say your minor sports leagues will pay you $2,000 a year. So it's kind of the same thing. They split out per player where we do per player, which I think's advantageous for us because we're growing so much that we're getting more players rather than just have a lump sum that then they have more players. And so I do think it is normal and it is advantageous for us to stay with the per player.
And that's per player. And again, it's just per player, doesn't matter because I know it's obviously the Elderton Lucan minor ball system. So it doesn't matter that where they're playing. It's just per player that's registered. Okay.
Correct. Yeah, they just give us their registration numbers and we base it off that. And then the lower amount is usually for the introductory sport. So when they're not traveling is basically, so if it's just like
Right.
the U5s when it's Lucan versus Lucan all the time,
Yeah.
they get the introductory rate where
Right.
when this travel starts, then they go to the other rate.
Okay. And then um and then back to the hockey. Um and Asabo Valley is getting the same discounted rate as Lucan Minor Hockey and skating. And I'm assuming North Mid and Middlesex Center are doing that the same sort of um, arrangement.
That is my understanding. I've actually not talked to Middlesex Center that I can remember, but North Middlesex was, and they were considering them a minor sport, a local minor sport. So, yeah.
Okay. And then I guess I would ask from an operational standpoint, um, like, is there any, like, if, and I would say to both Jeff and Darcy, like, if I said to you, you need to come up with $30,000, would you be able to? Like, and I'm just, again, that's just a number. I'm not saying, but like, I'm just saying if council directs and says, like you each need to bring your operating line down by X amount of dollars, can you, off the top of your head, think of areas where that can be easily done?
The I think the best way to put that would be if there was options available for council to be brought to council. Because you know, and I've said this in the past, I mean, you know, I can lower salt use and bring the budget down, but then we need the salt and the budget goes over. So I think we got to be careful at you know at how we want to you know save 30,000 save $30,000 because I want it to make sure it makes sense to council and everybody here. So if council wanted options on how to save a percentage of the budget, I have no issues coming back to council maybe with some options along those lines.
And yeah, I would agree with Jeff. I mean, for me, which Jeff doesn't have the option of, is like we could increase the fees by more to bring more revenue in to offset. We could, but I would say that operating is a very tough spot as we just went through line for line and there wasn't things glaring at us that we could take out big chunks. I mean, capital is where you could delay a project or not do a project and you can get the numbers down a little bit quicker. So I'm sure this afternoon will be more conversation where you might see some bigger number cuts, but yeah, we could create options. I agree with Jeff in the operating budget that could get you some savings.
Okay. Um, Catherine, with um, your suggestions, we've talked about the equipment reserve, why increasing it. And we're increasing construction just to stay with essentially inflation, or is there a specific reason?
Right now, it's to try to stay current with inflation for future projects. As we get this next iteration of the asset management plan done, I'm hoping that we can develop a long-term financing strategy or see what projects are there on a longer term to make sure that this level of contribution in that reserve is enough.
Mm-hmm.
Could we reduce it this year? Possibly. If they're looking at reducing ones, perhaps maybe in the building reserve, we don't have an immediate need at this point unless something comes up that you want, build a new building for anything, but that one, maybe you don't have to increase or bring that down a little bit and then catch up with it maybe over future years
Right.
instead of just all unit one, if you want to cut one.
And then like the Parks and Rec Reserve, so it the increase in there is obviously to cover our loan payments. But then it says the increase includes $50,000 to save for a condenser. But that's not what we're fixing. We're fixing a compressor. And you said the compressor is 60 to 80. So how much is a condenser?
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up. I want to talk about the condenser. So right now we have a condenser that's past its lifespan. It caused us a lot of issues from what I've heard, and I want to say it was 2021. We spent a lot of money to get it to where it is now. Right now, it's obviously working because we have ice over at the arena, but it is showing signs of its age. The reason why I think worst case scenario, talking to the refrigeration mechanic, if all the parts blew on the condenser right now, it would be $50,000. We could get it back up and running. I don't want to buy a new condenser until we know the future of the refrigeration plant and where we're going in the next 5 to 10 years. So my question was to him, give me a worst case scenario that I don't have to buy a new condenser, but I can keep the ice going for 5 years. And he said, if you keep 50,000 back right now, held somewhere, that if worst case we could get that condenser back up, he said we can get all the parts out of London. We'd be able to keep your ice in. But it could cost up to $50,000. Now, that being said, right now we was just here this morning. Condenser's running as good as it has in the last couple of years, so we may be fine. I just don't want to see us in a spot that we need to spend that 50,000 and we don't have it. So my suggestion was, can we put it away right now so we know it's there? Worst case, we move it over to the new refrigeration plant when that's the time. But this way, we're protected in case. A new condenser is upwards of 120 to 140.
But that would be all done with a new refrigeration and the whole thing, right?
Yeah, so if we were to move to the second ice pad or a new ice pad of any sort, we would get a different size condenser, so we would be in the 141, yeah, that range. But yeah, so if we put one in right now, it's not like we could just move it over and it would work. It would have to be a whole new because it'd have to be sized differently. So that's why I want to ensure we can get through for the next 5 years.
Is this something that we can break up and like 25 this year, 25 next year? Is that something we can do, or?
Yeah, we could do 10 for the next 5 years. If it broke down this year, I need the 50. I'm going to be coming to council and say I need the 50 now, right? Like it's just a heads up that we would have to find, or the ice is gone, right? Type thing. So yes, we could. 100% would be my answer.
In addition to, I think I mentioned this yesterday as well, the land sales that we had, there's some money in there. So if there's, say for the 3 lots on Fallon, my first estimate is about 118,000 that we have, that I would be asking council where they would like to use those funds. Originally, when we talked last year, budget time, those sort of things, we're gonna go back in to replenish the Parks and Rec. So if we put that in, it's either sitting there then for future use, or if you want to reduce the amount this year and put that in, and then we might have, depending on the conversation next year, if we have what projects are coming up, or how, or the projects that are up for discussion for 2026 get deferred or changed, then that just pushes it down. But for this year, you can maybe use that to soften the blow of the of an increase this year as an option. And then we have the other lot that we have got finalized cost, but there's not a lot of cost to go with that one. There's no services or anything to move the one the north of the drain. So depends where council wants to use that, or if you do split up with the condenser, you can move money from another reserve to cover that if you had a little bit in tax stabilization or something, and then you can do a plan to replenish that over time, or see where maybe you have a end of the year, maybe end up with a surplus and then replenish it that way. Those things aren't known, but there are other tools that we have options for if coming up. That
When does that lot close? Like the tree industrial lot?
Sorry, the survey is being done now. It's got to be completed, deposited at the registry office. You got to give the registry office a couple weeks. If we said this year, I'd be happy that it'll close this year. I think optimistically would be sort of mid-December. Yeah.
Optimistically.
Optimistically.
Do you have anything sparked there, Alex?
Well,
Yeah, there's little things, picnic tables, garbage cans, things like that. I'm just wondering, is this something that we have to do all this year, or is it something that can be, you know, a bit this year, a bit next year? Like do one park and then do the next park and so on. Just wondering if that's something, and it's kind of hard to dig through this and find things that I can look at and go, okay, do we really need to do that? But those are ones that kind of, I thought to myself, okay, I went and looked around a little bit. Picnic tables in Market Street are not in terrible condition. There are a couple that are definitely not great. What are the garbage cans we're looking at? Wasn't sure what that was.
So the garbage cans, you'll see there's some at the soccer complex right in front of the arena. There's two, just as you walk in the arena. They're the black ones with the shamrock on them. That, yeah.
So to do a fee study on, I guess, the user fees, like, what do you said it's coming, like fee bylaw is coming back in December. What are you thinking of how you're going to manage that? Are you going to do like kind of a deep dive internally into that?
I guess, yeah, my answer would be yes internally. We have already started and we'll keep going on certain areas. And then obviously then we will go back to what we budgeted and say, oh, we budgeted at 3%, we're actually moving this, and then we go by the hours and figure it all out. So yeah, internally we're doing a fairly deep dive into the fee bylaw, and then that we'll see some results in revenue, but I don't know a number at this point right now.
Good, thank you. And then I guess the other one that we haven't really talked about is the whole Canada Day Summer Fest and what that means. you know, I think Lisa, when you presented yesterday or when you talked about it yesterday, you did make a good point. I thought about this last night. We have Canada Day and then essentially 2.5, 3 weeks later, we're doing Summerfest. And is there a way to combine the two? I mean, we already make Canada Day an event with the fireworks being the night before and then the activities during the day. Is there opportunity? And I guess my question is, we get that. I think you already had to apply for it though, probably the Canada Heritage for Canada Day. If we expand what we do for Canada Day, is there more opportunity and again, these aren't make or break dollars, but again, it could be a few dollars that could help to expand what we apply for the Canada Heritage Grant. And then have you and I probably putting you on the spot because I think I know the answer, but I was just going to say, have you had the opportunity to speak to our sponsors that sponsor Summerfest to see if they would still be maybe interested in sponsoring then Canada Day?
Thank you. So, yeah, there's a few options. Again, like I said, when I presented yesterday, we could stay status quo and do a 5-year report. Basically, we're in our 5th year of the Summerfest sort of thing, and kind of do that at that time. So it's not a rushed thing, or like we can maybe figure out some things. Or like I said, we do have Canada Day quite close to the Summerfest, and I think when we first started the event, there weren't as much, as I said yesterday, there weren't as much things happening as there are now. We have the markets on Main Street now. We have movie nights. We have a lot more community events that are happening now that weren't there when we first started. So I think that part is snowballing a bit now with other things. So like I said, we presented the idea of umping up a bit of Canada Day and that night before part, making that a bit more of an event since we're, kind of already there and doing all these things. The application has not been submitted yet. It's a little later this year. I'm not sure why, for the Canada Day. So we can, include more things. When looking at my sponsors, I have not obviously reached out to them about that changeover if they did, but honestly, I think they would quite easily transition over to, I would think most of them would still be supportive of the Canada Day event, as they are with Summerfest. So that can happen. Another thing with Canada Day, they're actually, asking us, since it's FIFA coming up in 2026, if we want to do some soccer related things in the event too. So not sure.
Soccer on top of Canada Day or in conjunction with Canada Day?
In conjunction with Canada Day, and how they can combine the.
Yeah, our CAO would like
I
to
know.
put that on as
I know,
other
he-
duties as assigned.
You can run a little tournament.
You could run a little tournament.
Yeah.
You could,
So-
this could be,
Mhm.
yes.
Yeah.
exactly.
So I do think we could, if council wishes to move that way, we can definitely create a more bigger event on Canada Day. We can keep status quo for a year for Summerfest and kind of reevaluate at the end of the year and see where we're at. Like I said, there's numerous options. Like if council wants, we can come back with a report, because it's not really too much of a budget kind of issue. It's more, because it's, besides Canada Day, I guess there would be maybe more of a commitment that way, but then we would get sponsors to change. So it's kind of just shifting at the end of the day. So we can do a report with some options for council to consider for year end, or we can discuss it further.
Yes.
I was just gonna say, it is interesting because actually I'm supposed to have a ticket for the July 2nd game, but it's Canada Day is right in the middle of that tournament. So if, maybe there's an opportunity to get Lucan minor soccer involved in something. There's a huge number of kids involved in soccer. Maybe there is an opportunity to do a mini tournament, mini World Cup tournament. You could make up, different teams or different countries and have your own sort of just a fun thing, mind you. But maybe there is an opportunity there. I don't know if that would generate any more money, but it would certainly generate
Well,
more people.
But if you were doing that, then again, it helps with maybe not doing Summerfest, right? Like
Mhm.
it's,
Mhm.
yeah. Um,
Sorry, and I think because of the markets that we're having now as well, it's kind of almost the same in a way. Like we could pump up the markets even a little bit. Like we already have live music now at the markets. We're having vendors. So what's the difference in a way that from Canada Day and the markets that Summerfest is adding to those that already exist? So those now exist. So I think they're complementary. I don't know if we need to do something else that's exactly the same thing. So now that, like I said, the markets do have that sort of flavor now, the live music, and we could incorporate themes on those markets as well, incorporate, kids' activities or, not inflatables, but, like things like that. So I don't want to duplicate our work and our energy and our time to just do the same thing over and over again in a way.
so how difficult would it be for you to get a report, for the end of the year kind of, so we can kind of wrap our heads around that? Because I do think, I do think that it does warrant more of a broader council discussion as opposed to Alex and I just making recommendations on that. So if you could work towards a report, I think that would be good. Okay. Does anybody have, I know we didn't make any decisions. We didn't make any slashes or increases or anything. Yeah, I don't know if you've got any thoughts after the questions that I had.
Certainly gave us a lot to think about and go back and maybe have another look at some of those revenue lines or how we can incorporate any changes that we want to make in the fees bylaw and accompany that with when we have the conversation about with council, like, because they've seen all the budgets and go, this will help help our situation here. Could go back and look at some of the reserves, like the building reserve, could we make that smaller? I know there was last year when we talked about cutting that one, there was a commitment when we were using that for the phase 2 that
Yes.
you committed to an increase, so. But when we look at, are there any immediate needs? Can we dial that back to the $400,000 mark or something as we had in the previous 4 years, kind of, or 5 years? Or the road construction, could you take 50 out this year and probably still be okay? Our OSIF and CCBF, our OSIF seems to be going up, or so we've been able to use that to fund like a whole project almost. Like, so for example, the Nicoline Ave project we had taken out, or we were gonna do it this year, but then you'll see we postponed it to 2026. That's for the road piece. But now we have our OSIF allocation and we're like, well, we have enough now to use it for that. Whereas in 2025, we used it for Water Street. So, but then we have another project that comes up.
Right.
So, and we don't know if we're keeping up with inflation, if this is a good, level that we have in this reserve at this time, or is it too much? Is it not enough? My overall feeling is that there is always going to be an infrastructure gap based on your asset management. But as you go through that, getting that project done, we should have a better idea for that and then really work on what's coming up and we can get a better handle on where our reserve funds are at. The equipment one and the Parks and Rec is more, if we go ahead with some of these projects, it would be it would be depleted. Can you go negative? Sure, you can borrow from other reserves the cash flow is there, but it just on paper that it looks negative, but you could catch up with that, a plan over time and just know that's coming, but then spread it out over a few years instead of just one hit in 1 year. Yes. So-
Yeah, I think possibly, possibly after this afternoon's conversation, there might be more, like you guys might walk away with, you know, a little bit maybe direction or different thoughts as to between the two budgets. So hopefully that happens. I do say I like the idea, especially with the public works and the election year. I do like that 150 coming out of tax rate stabilization. I can wrap my head around that. The 65 I don't know whether you were considering the whole 216 to come out of tax rate or just the public works piece. What?
I
Wait.
think, it's an option that you could do the full 216
Okay.
of what we have for one time.
Yeah.
That would, I said there's about 450 in that account to use. So if you used half, then that would help. That would take a few percentages off our proposed increase. So that is an option if council wants to do that. I would present both for sure.
The other one, and Ron and I talked about it after we met yesterday, and of course it was the OPP costs and then how to bridge that. So we had put away whatever 114 or 150, whatever it is, last year, but we did that considering that that was going to cover all of the costs that we figure are coming down the pipe. And I believe that the plan is from the Solicitor General is that those fees will be increased this year and next year. So I'm assuming that those costs, like we're going to get yet another ding to our OPP bill next year. So do you take the whole 78,000 out of the 114 or whatever it is that it end up being, or do you just maybe only take half of it so that at least there's still some there for next year? I think that that's how that looks. I think we need to kind of wrap our heads around as well. And ideally, I mean, we have Roma coming up in January. Not that necessarily we need to be a delegation to this, but there's certainly conversations that we can have at Roma and or I don't know what the discussions you're having with the CAOs is. At least the Solicitor General could at least, when they give us the bill for this year, at least tell us what they think the increase is going to be like for next year. Like they should be able to pad that, and because everybody's going to be in the same boat. So if we knew that, that would maybe make it easier for us to make that decision on how to manage the reserve that we put away last year. I don't know what you're hearing from anybody.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we're supposed to have a CAO meeting on the 8th of November, I believe. So this will be one of the topics we want to talk about because again, it's not just us, it's all of the lower tiers. I did get a good email today from Middlesex Center. Looks like they've got some grant money to keep their one program going within the OPP. So that's good. But it's kind of over and above what our regular stuff is. So, you know, you did talk, Madam Mayor, about meeting with the Solicitor General. I still struggle with the fact that we were imposed a police services board when we've had the police services board for a year. I really can't say that I've seen any difference anywhere. And I think we've all said it before. To do something just to do something is kind of useless. It costs money to have a police services board, and I haven't seen any benefit to it yet. And I think that's just a make work project for someone. And I have not seen a benefit from it yet.
That kind of discussion, I think, though, is better if we do it collectively. So, I wouldn't say, that, as Lucan, we lead the charge, but, there's no reason why it coming out of it, well, why can't there be a joint delegation request made between Lucan, Ally Metcalf, North Mid, that sort of thing. If that's how other communities are thinking.
So I think I will start that discussion at the CAO meetings, because I do think that's the group where it should start. So.
Well, and there should be a better understanding now that we've had it for the year, like exactly what have the costs been to putting this board in place, and what are the costs to our communities, and what have we got exactly? So. Okay, I don't think I have anything else with that from anything else. So our next steps, we're obviously having the capital discussion this afternoon. You guys can go back and I don't know, do what it is you do with with the kind of, all of the different points that we've been, I guess, I don't have, obviously I have no firm suggestions as to how to get this down further. I don't have a goal. I mean, I think the last few years we've been around that 4%. Ideally, it would be great to be there. Realistically, I don't necessarily think that this is the year that we're going to get that. I hear from neighbors that that they're looking at higher increases. But I guess when it does come, and Alex said about not wanting to overwhelm and overload our staff, we do have to really look at efficiencies in how we do things, and what that looks like. And I certainly don't want to put anything more on anybody. On the flip side, if I am asking my residents to cough up more, then as a municipality, I think in fairness to our residents, then we have to be doing some heavy lifting as well. So just leave it at that. What are you thinking the next steps then, Catherine?
So our next steps, I would like to have a follow-up meeting, which I think will be towards the end of November, or the last week of November, I think is the next available time for most people. Because at that time, with Finance Committee, because we also want to discuss the water and wastewater operating, which we haven't done yet, which we'll be working on in that next month. We can also take a look at, like you said, what we have here, to review, if there's something there as we work through the fees bylaw, those kinds of things, if there's more revenue that we can get, or if there's something we can think of over the next few weeks that we could cut. Also, we'll get some more numbers as they come in, like OMPF will probably come in. I'm hoping it's more than the 5% increase I have in the budget. But I'll know that in the next week. And our final OPP costs, those kinds of things will come more in November. So we may have better information if we plan something for the end of November. So we can schedule a meeting at this time, or we can have an offline conversation this week and check schedules. I think that would be prudent to have another finance committee meeting for those reasons.
That sounds good. I am good with that. So yeah, we can have an offline discussion on what date works for everybody. I think we've got enough time to do that. Okay, so I think we just don't need any sort of motion, just a motion to adjourn, because we're just continuing the discussion going on. Okay, I think that's it. So motion to Alex and I.